"I think I need to go to hospital," he said. I was so surprised that I laughed. We had been through this drill before. 2 trips to A&E with what might have been a grumbling appendix. Both times the pain had passed. This time it didn't. I dropped Bert off with neighbours and promised to be back in a couple of hours, but soon I was texting them to ask if they wouldn't mind him staying over. H sat in a plastic waiting room chair, a cannula in his hand, looking miserable. It was Saturday night. The place was brimming with rugby players admiring their broken fingers, drunks with lacerated faces, and elderly people hunched in wheelchairs, their carers refusing to take them back to the residential home. By the time I left him, it was after midnight, and he still hadn't been moved to a ward. I went home and didn't sleep. Returning the next morning, I found that things had got worse. H was vague and hot with fever. The pain had built up through the night, he said, but by the time it was at its peak, the nurses were changing shift, so nobody could give him the medication to make it bearable. Then his appendix burst. He felt it happening. He screamed out in agony, only to be scolded by the ward sister for being rude and making a fuss. The man in the next bed had to get up to advocate on his behalf. He was calling through the curtains to us now, saying, "Terrible state they left him in, poor fella." There was still no sign of an operation. H was afraid. After that, I was afraid too. It seemed to me that something dangerous and terrible had happened while I had deserted my post. And it was still happening. The nurses and doctors appeared to be drifting around as if they were in no hurry at all, as if a man should lie back and allow his internal organs to rupture without a whimper. I felt, suddenly and furiously, that I could lose him. He clearly needed someone at his bedside to defend him, so that's what I did. I planted myself there, ignoring visiting hours, and when the pain got unbearable, I trailed behind the ward sister until she helped him. I'm usually too embarrassed to order my own takeaway, but this was different. It was me versus them, my husband's suffering versus their rigid schedule. I was not going to be beaten. I left that evening at 9 o'clock and called every hour until he was safely in theatre. I didn't care that I was being a nuisance. Then I lay awake until he was out again and I'd heard that he was comfortable. Then I couldn't sleep anyway. At moments like this, sleep feels like falling. You sink into luxurious blackness, only to jolt awake again, staring around at the darkness as if you might divine something in the grainy night. The only things I could find were my own fears, the unbearable fact of his suffering, and the terror of being left to survive without him. I took compassionate leave from work and kept up my vigil all week between school drop-offs and collections. I was there for the surgeon explaining the extent of the infection with something approaching awe. I was there to fret over H's temperature refusing to fall, his blood oxygen levels failing to return to normal. I helped him to take slow walks around the ward and watched him sleep afterwards, sometimes drifting off mid-sentence. I changed him into clean clothes and brought him tiny quantities of food to eat. I tried to soothe Bert's fear of his father, suddenly hooked up to so many wires and tubes and bleeping machines. Somewhere in the middle of this catastrophe, a space opened up. There were hours spent driving from home to the hospital, from hospital to home, sitting by the side of H's bed while he dozed, waiting in the canteen while the ward rounds took place. My days were simultaneously tense and slack. I was constantly required to be somewhere and awake and vigilant, but I was also redundant, an interloper. I spent a lot of time staring around me, wondering what to do, my mind churning to categorize these new experiences, to find a context for them. And in all that space, it suddenly seemed inevitable that this would happen. A strange, irresistible hurricane was already blasting through my life anyway, and this was just another part of its wake. Only a week ago, I had given notice on